Before I get to the main thing I want to say in about 10 minutes, I want to follow up a little bit on what Charlie Walters just said, the importance of that 100% parity program that the Roosevelt administration put out. And I'm old enough, I lived through that because I'm one of the few, although there's others in the room, that actually voted for Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Under that farm parity program, and I'm not a farmer, I looked at it, and this is my view of what it actually did, summarized as briefly as I can summarize it. The federal government determined the crop price that enabled the farmers to cover their normal production costs plus make a minimum profit. Then if the market prices on a particular crop fell below that level, the federal government loaned the farmers funds equal to the parity price and put that crop in storage. This storage of crops reduced the supply, which forced prices back up above the cost of production. At that point, the farmers took the crops out of storage, sold them on the open market, and repaid the loan plus interest. And both the farmers and the government made money on the deal. So you wonder why this program was stopped. From my point of view, it was stopped by pressure from corporate food processors, who of course wanted to pay lower prices for crops, and from commodity speculators who benefit from fluctuating prices. These two combined to put pressure on Congress, and that's why I believe the program was stopped. Now this program, parity program, would work just as well today, although we would hear cries that the government is interfering in the free market, in quotation marks, before discussing other areas where this same concept would work. I'm going to repeat a statistic I gave you a couple days ago. Over the last 5 years, the average amount of new dollars created, new debt dollars created by the Federal Reserve System has averaged $689 billion per year. If we were to spend that into circulation, this would be a $689 billion dividend to all the people of the country. Instead, it becomes $689 billion more in interest-bearing debt. The amount needed per year, if we got this system changed, and we did do away with the fractional reserve system and we did nationalize the Federal Reserve banks, I'm going to proceed now into my vision. Yours could be different, of what will be the positive benefits to the people, because they have to also not only be told that the system is wrong, but what's in it for me. I mentioned before what our total money supply was. I think it's 25 trillion according to what I read at the Federal Reserve. Others have said 45 trillion. We know it's a huge amount. Our total money supply, and I do know this from the Federal Reserve's report, and I assume they know, is $12 trillion. So depending on how you look at it, we owe twice as much or 4 times as much money as there is in existence. This brings about an impossible situation, because when our debt money is created under the present system, only the principal is loaned into circulation, not the interest. So we are always expected to pay back more money than there is. Now what I want to give you is a vision of the future under an honest monetary system. At the end of this, we won't have any questions. We can do them later on the panel, because I'm only given 10 minutes, so we won't have time for questions. But I just want to give you a vision of what I think could possibly be done. Here's what we can do, and I'm going to make an assumption that we only have $689 billion to spend into circulation each year. It could be a different number, but we have to make some assumptions. Obviously, the first thing we could do is reinstate the 100% parity program for farms, which in effect created a minimum wage for farmers and doesn't cost us anything to do. I mean, that's about the best deal I've heard. Next, we could take it as a priority to pay off our now $7.9, almost $8 trillion national debt. Now, 3.4 of that $1 trillion is intra-government debt. It's debt we owe ourselves, and we pay ourselves interest on the debt, and we can ignore that portion of the debt. The publicly held portion of the national debt is about $4.5 trillion. So I'm going to say out of this $689 billion, let's over 10 years pay off this $4.5 trillion. So if we paid $450 billion, spent it into circulation each year to pay off the national debt, that would take 450 of the $689 billion and leave us with $239 billion. Don't worry about the math. I know that gets troubling, but I'm just pointing out where I'm going with this. Then I think the next thing we should do, in my opinion, is establish programs similar to the old WPA, the Works Progress Administration, or the CCC, the Civilian Conservation Corps. Probably also a National Child Program and a Care for Senior Citizens program. That's for those that can't afford to care for themselves. This program would make the government the employer of last resort. Here's what I envision. Anyone who could not find a job could go to work for the federal government at an hourly rate of $8 per hour. This would mean $16,640 per year versus the $10,712 they get at the current minimum wage of $5.15. What would be the result? There would be no unemployment except voluntary unemployment. There would be no unemployment payments, and welfare payments would be limited to those who for physical or mental reasons would be unable to work. We would hear the usual argument that raising the wage to $8 will raise prices. But remember, the floor or the minimum livable wage only affects businesses who are not paying a decent wage. Yes, some fast food places, Walmart, and other low-wage employers, their prices might have to go up some in order to pay a decent wage, but that's an advantage, not a disadvantage. The cheapest price is not always the best price. This would also save businesses money because it would eliminate the unemployment tax, which costs them about 2.1% of wages. If there's no unemployment, there's no tax necessary. And there would be more demand for the goods and services business sell because everyone who wanted to work would be working and consuming more than if they were unemployed. The current unemployment rate is 5%. Maybe it's 4.9, I don't know, which represents roughly 7.5 million workers. So the overall net cost of this program, if you multiply 7.5 million workers by the $16,640 a year that they would be paid working for the government at $8 an hour, the overall cost I estimate to be about $115 billion a year. And the list of jobs those working for the government could do is almost endless. It is possible that our real unemployment rate right now is not 5%, but 10%. I lean to that. In that case, there would be about 15 million people working for the government at $8 per hour. Then the cost would double to $230 billion. And if this is how it worked out, we'd only have $9 billion left of this dividend that we're spending into circulation. But there are still things we can do to improve life in America at no cost to the federal government. Earlier, my friend Kenny Bonsack outlined one, rebuilding the public infrastructure with interest-free loans to state and local governments. I think we also all know how well the so-called free trade system has worked. Our standard of living is being destroyed by free trade, which of course is not free trade, it's corporate managed trade. Corporations go to Mexico, China, or elsewhere to find low-cost labor. As a result, we are losing our manufacturing base. We need to restore that base, and I think here's how we could correct this problem. Just as farm parity established a base which covered the cost of production and a minimal profit, we could establish a similar base for goods produced in low-wage countries. Just determine what the labor costs are in relation to the price of any manufactured product. This information is available from our own past manufacturing records. Then place a tariff on that amount to the imports of these items from these low-wage countries. This tariff would mean that the price of the product would be based not on 30 cents an hour or $1 an hour, but more like $15 or $20 an hour. This takes exploiting cheap labor out of the equation. Of course, there would be cries of protectionism, but if protecting the living standards of the average American is not a prime duty of the federal government, what in the hell is? Also, we must establish publicly financed clean elections at the federal and state level. This would remove the power of big money as much as it is possible and would cost on the average less than $3 billion a year. The clean election laws in Arizona and Maine are working very well. This $3 billion a year would buy back our representative democracy. Our elected representatives would be responsible to their constituents, not to their big campaign contributors. At $3 billion or maybe less a year, there's a great bargain. We can also save Social Security, grow the economy, create new jobs, and at the same time give a substantial tax cut to every American worker at no cost to the federal government. This is a plan I've been working on for about 6 years, and I've got people in Congress working on it now. Some are helping me on it, which I'm grateful for. Here's how you do it. The first thing you do is exempt the first $25,000 of earned income from the 6.2% employee's share of Social Security tax. This would increase the take-home pay of every working American. Okay, well, I might need a little bit more, but I'll finish as fast as I can. This would increase the take-home pay of every working American by up to $1,550 per year. 6.2% of $25,000 is $1,550. This plan gives all of the tax cuts to those who make less than $90,000 per year and gives none to those who make more. Step 2, how do we pay for it? We remove the present $90,000 cap on income subject to the Social Security tax and keep the benefits as they are now, adjusted each year for inflation. Also apply the 6.2% Social Security tax to unearned income as well as earned income, with the same $25,000 exemption as for earned income, and also retain the estate tax as it is and devote the proceeds to Social Security instead of giving it to the wealthy. These actions would more than pay for the cost of this program, and the increase in economic activity resulting from putting $1,550 into every American's pocket would substantially increase our GDP, with the result that the projected Social Security shortfall just disappears. We don't have a Social Security problem. Everybody wins except the wealthy, who have already won from the tax cuts in the last few years. This does take some of it back. I'm not going to mention universal health care because I'm sure Dennis Kucinich is going to mention it, and he has an excellent plan for that. And as he says, we're already paying for it. We're just not getting it. The possible actions I have just outlined are mine. Others might choose to address education, affordable housing, or other items first. But I'm sure you get the message. Okay, but I'm going to take a little more. I'm sorry. I'm almost done. 2 more minutes. These are just a few of the things we can do when we control and issue our own money instead of borrowing it into circulation with an interest charge attached. The ability to make life better for all Americans has been and is being stolen from us by the existing debt money monetary system. And after 10 years, when the $4.5 trillion publicly held debt is paid off, we would then have that $450 billion a year to use, and we would also be saving $225 billion a year in interest. And I'm going to close with this. Our immediate need is to find ways to educate U.S. citizens that this monetary problem exists, that it is stealing money out of their pockets every day, and that there is a better way. Nationalize the Federal Reserve and eliminate fractional reserve banking. Our total interest-bearing debts are growing faster and faster, and as the Fed continues to raise even interest rates, we will be paying even more. The time to change to an honest monetary system is now. Quite frankly, you're using my time. Quite frankly, I am surprised that our debt-based monetary system has not already collapsed. Together we must find a way to let U.S. citizens know that this is a real problem and that there is a real solution, and that solution will make life better for them and for their children and their grandchildren. One last important point. even if we are successful in eliminating fractional reserve banking and its debt money, even if the money is spent not loaned into circulation, it's still a political problem. I have just given you my vision of how our dividends should be spent into circulation, and I assumed it would be spent with social justice in mind, spent in ways to improve life for all Americans. How the money is spent in circulation is as important as that it is spent, not loaned into circulation. How would the present administration spend it? To eliminate all taxes on the wealthy, to rule the world militarily? I think one can be quite sure it would not be spent to ensure peace and social justice. And at that point, I'll finish. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard.